I wanted to do a quicker video on an update to artifacts in terms of which ones are good, which ones are basically useless, and kind of just go down the line from there. It will probably be a separate tier list video at some point, but this is just like early on, just general kind of reactions in terms of what you should upgrade if you're trying to use those umbral crystals and you're near the cap and you need to know what they'd be worth on long term, and kind of just go from there. So artifacts have a weird update where before you had a lot of flexibility. You could put a gem slotting pin as your last slot and slot a gem into any of them. Gems are generally speaking to be the best kind of final slot for an artifact because they have a really big DPS boost. But for this update, all artifacts are like converted to have skill slots or defense slots or offense slots instead, and you can't slot a gem setting pin into those slots. And because of this, if your artifact didn't have a gem on it already, it effectively won't ever be able to get a gem. And because you're not able to get a gem, most of the time, gear that drops in the open world just ends up being better than what you can get on a weapon related artifact. On armor, it's kind of a similar situation. I probably need to look up a neural database for most of these armor types, but a lot of armor doesn't actually have like ideal perks, and you can't take them off. And the perks that you can rotate just aren't amazing either. So like sacrificial empowerment, like so I want to be tanky, but then I have sacrificial empowerment locked, so it's going to reduce my armor. So it's like this is like probably one of the worst perks to actually have on featherweight. But it's just on featherweight, so now you have to kind of deal with it. It's like that kind of theme that just exists a lot. Some pieces luckily still have your gem slot on here, but it's not like every single piece. So I would just kind of be, it's a little bit wary. It's an armor to armor situation. Jewelry speaking is like generally just not as good as open world jewelry anymore. I think the only exception maybe is like Endless Thirst and Justice. Like those two are competitive. Blood Drinker's competitive, but I need to abandon an artifact thing or actually upgrade a piece of gear to show that one off in game. But I could show it off from this standpoint. We can kind of go down the line. So, like, Unyielding, probably still pretty good. It's basically resilient. Effectively got buffed. Void Darkplate caught a pretty big nerf, but it has 3 defensive slots that you could swap between, and it has a gem slot, so this is still very good. Magnetic Gauntlets has not been meta for some time, and now has even worse perks than when it was meta. Freedom is really good because it has 3 defensive slots that you could swap between, has a gem slot. This is a solid piece. Unmoved has 2 defensive, 1 offensive they could swap between, so it's still a solid piece. Uh, Jin is pretty good. 3 defensives that you could swap between, still a solid piece. So like all those are kind of a theme, right? Nimble Coat, Lifestealer's Drought has an activation cooldown, but it's a pretty good perk. Vital Synergy is a very solid perk on armor, especially because it's fixed and you can't get that otherwise. The offensive slot is not always ideal, but generally for speaking for classes that like Nimble Coat, they'll be fine with 1 offensive slot, so I think this is solid. Ghoul Gloves has not been good for some time. Now it has Breaker Bypass on it, which is even a worse perk. Etune Leather Pants, um, 2 defensive shirking. It's like, this is okay, but I think Old Crown just outclasses it. Like, it's 9 attributes versus 3 attributes, and then Old Crown gets access to 2 extra gem slots. I think Old Crown's just, like, strictly better than Etune Leather Pants now. Wing Leather Shoes, Hardcore Parkour sucks. Free, and then you have a defensive and an offensive. Like, this seems kind of mid now, slash, like, almost dead because Hardcore Parkour is, like, not a very good perk at all. Grey Wizard Hat lost its extra int, didn't get anything to compensate. Has Shirking Fort on a light piece, which is really bad, so I just don't think this is like super good to use anymore. Featherweight has Sacrificial Empowerment, but it's still Featherweight. Even though it got nerfed, it's probably still good enough to run, but it's just kind of sketchy. It also has a skill slot on it for the last slot, which is not ideal. You usually want the skill slots on your weapons, so this is pretty mid. Quick Draw wasn't good before. Got a small buff. Thorny Reflection is not really what you want on a light build that's trying to not take damage, so I'd say it's a pass. Koya uh, actually got a pretty big buff in terms of its perk pool. The unique re reinforced kneecaps would be nice if it applied to Elemental. I'm not sure if this applies to Elemental anymore, but that's something that's probably worth looking up. Or I'm not even sure if it ever did. Actually, it's probably easier just to look it up here. Base damage reduction. I mean, it says ranged attacks. If this is elemental and it's physical, this is actually probably pretty good now. I'm not sure if it is or not, but that's something that's like worth keeping an eye out on. Probably stay tuned for a new video on that one at some point. Tumbler was the king. Uh, Still think it's fine. The 10% power is still good enough for some weapons to be used. The shrinking heals is still good. Has double defensive. Has a shrinking energy. I mean, this seems solid still. A butcher doesn't have a gem slot. Basically dead. Freya doesn't have a. It has a gem slot. Okay, that's good. It has skill lock. Sundering stacks isn't ideal, but it's fine. Offensive perk locked on weapons pretty bad. This seems pretty mid, but still could be used as like a utility CDR related hatchet because there aren't many CDR related perks in the game anymore. Uh, Mjolnir apparently is insane. The tech is you go into PvP or PvE, use hated on your other weapon, you proc the hated effect, you swap to Mjolnir, and apparently that damage carries over, allegedly. Still need to test in game. You can't add a gem setting to pin before, you can't add it now. You have a perk slot locked, but you can swap between now, which is much better than what it was before. You have an offensive slot. I mean, this actually seems like it's a pretty good weapon now, assuming the scaling actually works right. Abyss, you can't add a gem slot anymore, so it's kind of a nerf in that regard. It has an offensive slot on there, which isn't ideal, but it's okay. That seems fine, but I wouldn't say amazing. A Boltcaster, um, probably fine enough for a bow, but you can't get Plague Strikes on it, which kind of sucks. Which you can on a normal bow. So I don't even know if this is better than normal bow, but it's doing lightning damage, which is kind of nice. And I think that lightning scaling's all messed up this season too. Mechanic never really was good, but now you can switch between the accelerating traps and mending sticking bombs perks. So if you want to take those off, you can, which is kind of the entire point of running the mechanic. But it's a funny weapon. It's not that good. Gladiator still is not very good, to be honest. Michael still not very good. Wall is okay, but you can't slot sturdy fortification, which automatically brings it down like a tier 2. You can't slot it, protection on there, so I'd say wall is tentatively not a good tower shield anymore. Only redeeming part is you have extra stam. Uh, Inferno, very good offhand because it has a good utility, but I would say as a main hand is a little bit lackluster compared to what you can get from open world drops. Vengeance can't put a gem slot on it, but has some access to some really good perks. You could swap out the skill perk if you want to. Defensive slot is the last slot. I mean, this seems decent. Scorpion Sting, good utility. I wouldn't say it's a great damage artifact. Finisher, apparently there's a Reddit post on this. Apparently if you have your own bleed versus a target, the 15% damage will apply, and if you don't have your own bleed, you can still pop other people's damage. You just the 15% more damage won't apply. So it seems like this is actually still a really good artifact for PvE. Deep Freeze took a big nerf with not being able to have the or apparently it took a big nerf. People are saying that it isn't good, but I'm like reading this now. It still has a gem slot. I guess the double offensive perk is like not ideal at all. So that's the probably main thing holding it back. A Life Taker, the scaling's a little bit weird, not a good main hand for, or like as for healers, you can't run this anymore, but for Musket, it's fine because it has strictly dex int scaling, and healers don't run those. But there was a better VG anyway that most healers weren't running. Pestilence took a big nerf because no gem slot. Serenity took a big nerf because no gem slot. Both those are basically dead in the water. Odo took a big nerf because no gem slot, kind of dead in the water. Endless Thirst is one of the only competitive earring artifacts still in the game, and even then it's probably not as competitive as an open world drop, to be honest. Blood Drinker is still good for tanking. The buff was actually pretty nice. Still has a gem slot on it, which is really good. Has 2 offensive slots, which isn't ideal, but the perk is good enough for it's the only lifesteal perk that doesn't have an activation cooldown in the game. So, and because of that, it's probably still good enough to run. Lost Stopwatch's utility, it still is fine, has a gem slot. Ankh is dead compared to other amulets. But Lost Stopwatch, I mean, relatively speaking, you don't have protection, so it's like not nearly as good. It's just it still has the unique utility that makes it like serviceable sometimes. The Survivor's Coat, not very good, but it's like okay. Very expensive to get too. Gillies, this is okay, but I just don't think it's like that insane. Ironheart is really good still. Thorny Reflection isn't ideal, but you have a double defensive slot that you can switch between. You have a gem slot on there, seems solid. Nature's Wrath has been dead. Seems like it got nerfed after this. It does have Terminal Vengeance on it, which is kind of interesting. But I just don't think it's good enough because Empower is just too big of a source of your damage to get rid of. Ghostly Touch wasn't good before, still not good now. Azoth Conductor is good for selective builds, generally speaking not ideal, but has a gem slot on there. Life Takers for Life Stealer's Drought's actually a really good perk, or it seems like it's a really good perk. So I kind of like this one, honestly. Especially for like, what do you call it? For Crescent Wave, it seems like it would be decent. Maybe some medium Void Blades bring it back, but Jin might be better still. Cow of Power. I don't think this was ever that insane, but it seems alright. Creed Boots was good for PvE before, has a skill slot, has an offensive slot, so there's no gem slot on here, which is a really big hit, but it still has access to some decent damage. I'd say tentatively not a very good artifact, but it's has a unique enough perk where you can argue it's still decent. Old Crown, one of the better PvE artifacts, definitely consideration for one of the best PvP artifacts in the game too. That one's very good. Vampiric, good for selective builds, generally speaking, not best in slot. Lich is actually like a little better than people give it credit for, but it has a skill slot on there which isn't ideal. Runic just never was good. The buff didn't really make it that much better either. Sin's a good utility offhand, still is a good utility offhand. I'd still consider running it. So that's like a high level rundown of all the artifacts. Try to go through them really, really quick. We'll do a separate tier list video, and we missed a second page. Okay, never mind. Trinza is fine, good amount of life stealing on it. But I think a normal Warhammer actually might be able to get to higher values, but this seems actually like decent. Tempest Fury, you could just literally run into Infix and you get the same thing. This is a pain in the upgrade. I just wouldn't really worry about it because it's such a big pain in the upgrade. If you have it upgraded, you don't have a gem slot, so it's probably not that good. No gem slot on the Knight, but the unique effect is good enough to where it's somewhat viable. Shrapnel got a buff, still has a gem slot. Double Bleed, it just has too many, like, it has a lot of offensive slots. I guess on Musket, that's fine. I don't know, it just doesn't seem as scary as, like, having a triple attunement musket, though. Like, it seems okay. Burninator, the big nerf hit it, and it still doesn't look like it's too much better, but if you want to be annoying and just have dots going on forever, then you can do that. Hecta, like, for a burn build, Burninator's actually okay, but 250 int nerf hurts it a lot. Hecta, I don't think ever was that good. You do have a gem slot on it, though, and you can do Sacred, Sacred you can put on there, Savior you can put on there, you have a skill slot. I mean, honestly, this isn't that bad. I don't know if the unique perk is like something a lot of healers like to take advantage of, but it seems like good enough to consider for a life staff, but there's probably better life staffs to get. Venom, it actually has a gem slot, which is pretty nice. It does double. I mean, honestly, Venom is still really, really good. You just put, like, I mean, the offensive slot's a little bit awkward, but because you don't want Keenly Jagged, you don't want, unless you have a utility offhand, you don't want Keenly Empowered unless you have a utility offhand. So that part's a little awkward, but the rest of it's pretty good. Dorgot's good PvE, decent PvP. I expect to see this a little bit more. Otzi's the new best IG in the game. It does, because of the effect, has a skill slot on it, which is really nice. It doesn't have defensive slots, which kind of sucks, but it's okay. Fracture's new best Void Gauntlet in the game. It kind of was before, too. Actually has a gem slot on there. All healers should be running this one, not the other one. Grace is kind of funny, but not very good. The new Keen Speed perk really hurts it. Power Stone, still a good utility offhand. Has a gem slot, which is nice. Chaos has a gem slot, which is nice. You could switch the Crippling Blast Shot out. You have double offensive, seems okay. It's still a good utility thing, but more of a funny weapon than a good weapon. Wit, still good PvE, double defensive slot, sundering stacks. I mean, this still seems very solid for PvE. That's the only time we're really considering it. Relentless doesn't have access to the abnormal amount of protections that are completely OP, but still good as a utility thing to help your allies, so just even harder to run it compared to what it was before because of all the SNS buffs, but it's viable. Justice, very, very, very good. Probably the best jewelry artifact in the game now. Uh, I don't know if it's better than a random drop, but it's very, very close. Elemental Band got nerfed heavily. Doesn't have a gem slot on there. Has a ton of offensive perks, though. Honestly, this is probably runnable. I just don't know if it has, like, you kind of want the cursed enchantment for PvP. Like, you want one of the cursed ones that, like, makes your ring do more damage or makes your auto attacks or abilities do more damage, and this doesn't really have it, so that part makes it a little lackluster. Phoenix, good for all the squishy people, but you don't have all the protection, so that kind of hurts a lot. Plague Herald caught a nerf. Has vital synergy on a headpiece now. And I don't think vital synergy has a stack max, so that's actually like, no, that's a huge buff to Plague Herald. I didn't even realize that was a thing. So while your stamina's below 50%, you get a bunch of increased heals. So it's basically just before you pot, just make sure you stam out, and then this artifact's kind of insane, I'm not going to lie. You run Vital Synergy on this on your headpiece, you run it on your chest piece because Vital Synergy. I don't think it had a stack max. Let me check the... I need to check the status, though. Actually, this one's probably like a really weird one that you probably need to check out more before we commit to saying this is good. Because if you could stack the Vital Synergy, this is insane. But if you can't, then I'd say it's like decent, but I don't know if it's nuts. So if we go Vital Synergy, we have 2 unique ability IDs. If we go to the status effect for this, so I think the status effect can only proc once is the thing. Like, you can't have multiple of the same type of status effects, but you could stack Vital Synergy 1 and Vital Synergy 2. But I don't think you could have the same... Yeah, it has a stack max of 1, actually. So it's good, but like that perk on a headpiece is actually kind of insane. I just don't think it's best in slot because the stack max is set to 1. I guess we could check out the other one to the other status effect. That page locked up. That's cool. Old buddy keeps freezing on me lately. I don't know what it is. This one... Do you not have a stack max? You do have a stack max. Okay, yeah, so it's good. Like, it's really nice to have that on a headpiece, but you can't abuse it because you can't stack it. So I'd say tentatively solid, but the skill perk on it is kind of annoying. Everything else on it's pretty good, though. Hammer of Yeet is a funny one. You could actually switch out the ability perk to something that's useful now. Has Plague Strikes on it, which is really good. Thwarting Strikes is a solid perk. Offensive slot isn't ideal, but overall seems like it's a pretty solid Warhammer, all things considered. Crescent Wave doesn't have a gem slot anymore, so it's a big hurt there, or nerf there, but the utility and like how strong the wave actually is, I think makes it good enough to be viable still. You just have to take advantage of it through other effects, and your weapon just won't be as strong as a normal greatsword as a base, but you could build around it and make it even better. The hatchet seems like it's going to be pretty solid. The new bow is very solid. I think I accidentally talked about the other bow on here as if it was the new bow by accident. But I think the new, like, all the artifact bows are competitive, but this one's, like, really cool in terms of its utility. Plague Strikes on a bow is very, very nice. So I think this is, like, a little bit better than a Conite, I think it's called. But I don't know, like, it depends on the Boltcaster with how the skilling there works. So just, a Conite I think is worse than a normal bow. This has unique enough utility where it could still survive in the new environment. Okay, so that's actually all the artifacts. So quick roundabout there. Have a separate tier list at some point, probably sometime next week or the week after, but wanted to put this out because a lot of people are asking about which ones to upgrade and which ones not to. So with that being said, I'll see you guys later.